Multiples, that's what we do.
It runs in the family, apparently.
Yep.
Usually fraternal twins aren't a familial thing. It's really identical.
Oh, really?
That's the opposite of what my doctor said, Grant, that he said that.
Oh, wait, maybe. But
because fraternal twins are two eggs, and that's a
Yes.
genetic thing. And the identical are just we all have fraternal twins. Heidi has boy-girl twins. I have boy-boy twins, who are obviously not. My
I thought
sister
it was
has.
the other way around. I have to go back to my genetics book. It's been a long time.
Well, we are live, and we just want to take this time to welcome everyone to the show tonight. How are you all doing, ladies, tonight?
Great.
Awesome. You can go ahead and share these to your respective pages if you like. Going ahead and doing that now myself to a few different places, and we're gonna get this party started. So I just wanted to say really quickly before we jump into today's topic that I don't know about you, but it's been a long week. And with that being said, we're just going to take a minute to pause and breathe. I need a woosah moment. It's been a crazy week. But I just want to thank each one of you individually for taking time out of your busy schedule. Jamie, Vanessa, Kim, Dr. Grant, and Heidi, welcome to the show. We're going to have
Jamie. It's not busy. I said, it's the pandemic. It's not busy.
Oh, well, I'm busy because I'm getting ready for school. So we're busy. And so it doesn't stop. So that's one of the reasons why we're talking about what we're talking tonight. Some schools are back. Some schools always been in school. It kind of depends on where you live in the country. And I know in the great state of Virginia, we are, depending on where you are in this state, where I am, we're going back gradually. So we started with the elementary school kids on hybrid. So the hybrid meaning that they go every other day. If you have 300 kids coming back to school, you have 150 one day, 150 the next day. And the days that they're home, they're on the computer learning. So they're doing alternate days. That's what hybrid is. So now they're trying to get them out of the house. And high school sports have started. So there are no spectators at the sports, but they're having sports start. And I think Wednesday in my area, they're starting to let high school and middle school kids start to return back to school on a hybrid basis. So we want to talk about tonight just what this effect has had on kids, not being able to go to their proms, not being able to hang with their friends, not being able to play sports. What does that mean for your senior kids? You know, those that have potential, had coaches looking at them, and now they can't compete with other kids who may not even be as good, but the coaches are going now looking at those other states because they can't see these kids play. People don't understand, well, why are these kids playing and there's no school? There's lots of reasons. There's money on the line for these kids. So we want to talk about those kinds of things because our kids are going through a lot. Jamie, I wanted you to take this time to introduce Heidi to us so we can dive right in.
Okay, so first of all, I want to welcome my wonderful cousin, Heidi, to be with us this week. By means of background, she has an MS in education, multiple subject teaching credential with a CLAD emphasis, and a single subject teaching credential in English, a master's in educational counseling, and her pupil personnel services credential. She is working on an MA in psychology and will be registered for a specialized certification that only exists in California around trauma. So we should also mention that she has she's currently a teacher and an academic advisor at a charter school, and that she supports is a support counselor for a children's crisis intervention program. So she is in the thick of what's going on with our kids. She has 3 wonderful children. So she's in this as a mom, she's in this as an educator, and also dealing with children who are going through crisis right now. So with that, I just want to welcome you. And as I said, she's my cousin and she's awesome. So I'm very excited she's here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to see you.
Hey, and so we want to just jump right in. Before we got on the call, Heidi, you mentioned that you are not in this area and your state handled things a little bit more different than a lot of other states. Without making us angry, can you just dive in and kind of guide us through with your expertise on the professional side as well as being a parent?
Yes. So from my understanding, California has taken one of the most restrictive approaches to the pandemic, which is understandable. We've got the large population in LA County, Southern California. It's a huge range of different geographical, areas in California. So our government chose to take a very, very restrictive approach to it. It does differ by county. I know personally, the school I teach at, my students are supposed to start coming back just this week, whereas my own children who go to school in a different county, they're on a hybrid kind of. My twins go to campus half the week, the other half the week they're on hybrid. They're at the high school level. My younger daughter, who's in the middle school, goes every day, but on a shorter schedule. My students at my school are going to be coming in cohorts where the groups are going to stay with the same teacher for every class. So even though I teach a psychology class, even though my students will be on campus, they won't be in my classroom. They'll be still doing the Chromebook, laptop, distance learning, but in a classroom literally like 10 steps from where I'm sitting in my classroom. Kind of one of the biggest issues, and it may be because my kids are very involved in sports, and I live in a small community where, football and basketball, things are very, very much part of the community. We are one of the few states whose high school sports has not yet started. And everything you said about, especially the seniors who are missing senior prom, missing, last year's class missed their graduation. So, I know the seniors this year are probably fearful of that happening with them. I know several senior football players who, I luckily I happen to know 2 who have received offers, but it's been difficult because, all they get to see are their junior year, sorry. And, if there happen to be an injury or anything like that, they're losing that ability to do it this year. The odd thing is that my youngest daughter does competitive cheer, and we've been able to practice, compete throughout this entire thing. The gym has been able to remain open because of their facility, the size, filtration, ventilation system, and all that. Schools don't necessarily have that option. So we do have a lot now. So we do have a lot of students who, if they're in competitive soccer and things like that, they are having to leave the state to compete, or to even play whatsoever. We just found out this week that some of our high school sports are starting back. My son plays football, my daughter cheers for high school. So it's supposed to all be starting back, but from what I understand, they're going to be tested on a weekly basis. They do have some things implemented. So I think what a lot of the frustration from a lot of parents here, why couldn't we have taken some of these steps that we've seen other states do and kind of have, different season, but still a sports season. Most of the parents I know are more concerned about their kids being able to get out there and play it versus the parents sitting in the stands and watching. Like it's kind of become more of a fight for, let the kids play. If we can't watch, we understand, kind of thing, but at least let the kids get out there. So that's been a frustration with a lot of the people in my area. So we're very hopeful that things are starting to, I guess, really lessen a little bit, but there's also that scary aspect of it now. Okay, so now they're going to be playing kids from other schools. They're going to be, dressing is that locker room situation, like all that kind of thing. So it seems like we get one step going one way, but then that brings a whole nother concern to the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been hard. Go ahead. Sorry.
I know when you said haven't started sports yet, and I know we have on this end. Vanessa, I know your son just started. My kids, I'll just say my youngest, I'll just deal with that one because I have one in college, and that's been a difficult situation, just going back and forth with all of that. But I'm just going to deal with the high school. My son missed his prom, he missed his graduation, homecoming, senior trip, all of it last year. He missed everything, and he didn't get to say goodbye to a lot of his friends before they went to college. And it was hard, and I had to bite the bullet personally, and I let him go see his friends, the ones that he had contact with. They met in open air in a parking lot by Chick-fil-A because they wanted to say goodbye to each other. It was sad. It really was. These are kids that you spend 12 years of your life with, mostly. And, as a parent, you have to make sometimes the hard decision on how to pull them back.
Yes.
And I think that for us, we made the decision to just have the kid, just have him be there with his friends. But, you guys make sure that y'all do the social distancing and everything like that. But, I understand you're trying to have that fight. Let the kids play. That's one thing that we're doing. Vanessa, do you want to share the experience? I thought in Loudoun County, they were going to allow parents at the games, but no spectators. Is that what you're hearing?
Well, they've amended that a little bit. So my son plays football, he plays varsity. And so tomorrow we're going to his game. They have limited tickets, so they only put the tickets on sale the morning of each game. And then each student can only have 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so each player can invite 2 people.
2 people. Mm-hmm.
And no other outside folks that I know of. And all of the athletes are temperature checked every single time they come to campus for practice. They have practice 6 days a week.
Yep.
And then the game day. And luckily for my son, now my oldest son was in the class of 2020, the first COVID class. They did have a graduation ceremony, no prom.
They did do the virtual.
Yeah, but my son didn't participate in the virtual.
Yeah.
They did have the outdoor graduation. Thank God, it was beautiful that day. Everybody was social distanced. The principal was social distanced as she handed out the diplomas. I thought they did a great job for what they had to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But they did manage to host a wonderful online tribute to all the seniors. And then the parents got the copies of each of the seniors' dedication. I keep mine on my background on my laptop. And I was very pleased with what they came up with. It was a very wonderful tribute they did last year.
They did. I have to say, I actually enjoyed that graduation, although everybody wasn't there at the same time. They had it spaced out by alphabet, and they actually played the march. They walked down, the family was in the front, you took your picture, you shook the hand, and we were in and out. And it was lovely. I didn't have to sit in the sun. It was beautiful. But they had to adjust a lot. And Dr. Grant, I don't know what your experience has been dealing with any kids that's been going through, but what do you have to say about children? They don't even have to be young children. We're talking teenagers too. We're talking high school kids. Tell me, what do you see, or what have you seen as far as trauma and stress?
Well, I'm in Florida, so schools are open.
They've been open. So do you know what's been going on in Florida? Do you know what's been going on with the schools and how they've been running and what they've been doing?
They've been running almost like we don't have a pandemic.
Really?
They may do it where like morning is like juniors and seniors, and afternoons are freshmen and sophomore. So they're splitting it that way, so there's not as many, but otherwise it's open. All the kids that are coming who wanted to play came to Florida, came to some of the states that are completely open. Mm-hmm. Florida is a place that people want to play anyway, because constantly, people are coming for sports, and they have a longer season because we don't have a winter.
Right.
So a lot of professionally minded kids come here anyway. So they benefited from in that perspective. Some kids are being affected by the lack of structure because there are different types of learners. So people who are more introverted are actually doing well when it was all at home. But
yeah, I've heard that kids who've had bullies have actually been doing better well in this modality.
That's completely understandable, because there isn't that fear of physical harm. So with bullying, there's still cyberbullying, but a lot of it is being tracked better by parents and schools. And they've done a lot of programs where they're trying to reduce cyberbullying.
Well, we did have Melania Trump's Be Best campaign. You know how effective that was.
Anyway, we're going to be best and not talk about her. And I wish junior high school that it was distance learning. Worst 2 years of my life. And, every day having to go to school, being bullied, I felt nauseous. I felt sick. I was suicidal. This is when I started drinking, was in the morning, I would start putting vodka in my orange juice to go to school. Like, that's what bullying does to people. So kids who, especially ones that don't need as much social interaction, the ones I know have been doing really well in this state. Hybrid helps with those who do need some social contact, but the lack of real structure does affect children poorly. That's one of the things about school, is it not only gives that social contact, it gives a structure to the day.
And we've seen just when we look at what's been going on with our kids from March to October, the CDC looked at the proportion of emergency room visits related to mental health, and that increased 24% for children 5 to 11 years old. 5 to 11. And for children, it spiked 31% among adolescents, which is 12 to 17, compared to the previous year. So we're seeing this huge uptick in mental health visits. And it also found that adolescents ages 12 to 17 made up the highest proportion of the children's mental health rate, mental health visits to ER, which we would have expected. But we're seeing this huge spike in this need for mental health services. So we know our kids, although, this minority folks who do adapt better to distance learning, they are struggling. But I wanted to ask Grant, how much of this, and Heidi as well, do you think is related to needing to be in school for social interaction, and how much of this, we have a lot of kids who do not have safe home environments.
Yeah.
And so they need to be in school for safety.
Yes. So, you know, as we spoke about in previous webcasts that you were in here for, Heidi, you know, there is a huge increase in domestic violence and instability because of, you know, alcohol and substance abuse at home. And that is having a deleterious effect on children.
Yes. I work in a nonprofit organization as a support counselor in a children's intervention program, crisis intervention program. And the goal of the program itself is to reduce the number of hospitalizations for children and adolescents. And so our job is when a child or adolescent is brought in to an emergency room, say on a 5150, danger to self. I don't know if 5150 is in other states, I'm sorry, but brought in basically to an emergency room situation, mostly adults, you know, everything on the planet going on with these people in urgent care. And it's not a good place for a child or an adolescent who is already in a crisis, you know, moment. So our job is to come in and provide sources like immediately to reduce the children from having to be put in an inpatient hospitalization, or even to have to remain longer in that urgent care situation. And with the pandemic, what we've noticed, we've had so my program probably has had much fewer clients, but it's because by the time the child or the adolescent makes it to the emergency room, they're already at such a crisis point that it is a life-threatening situation. Whereas before, you know, in school counselors are a huge piece of the program, honestly, the program, because a lot of our clients prior to the pandemic would come in based on something that the school counselor noticed, or the child or adolescent, you know, spoke to the school counselor about, and they were able to get them to a safe situation before they've attempted to hurt themselves, or before they've, you know, created a plan or anything to that point. And what we're noticing now is it's by the time the children get there, they're past that point. They've either attempted it, or like you said, they've started, you know, their behavior has completely changed because of substance use or something. Anxiety has become a huge issue in children. On a personal note, you know, I have 3 kids. My twins are boy-girl twins. They're 16. And then I have a daughter that just turned 13. Both of my daughters have managed to stay at the academic level that they've been at. They haven't loved it, but they've been able to, you know, keep their GPA where it was, continue doing work. They've been able to manage okay. My son, if I looked at his transcripts just the other day, and if you look at his freshman first and second semester, and then you look at his transcript from this semester, night and day. And it breaks my heart, you know, absences, incomplete, things that my son has never had to endure. And I truly, you know, adolescents, their peers are their grounding force, you know, as much as parents don't like to admit it. Their peers are what they rely on at that age. And not having that peer support around them, I think has, especially in son's case, has affected him. And just that one-on-one contact, you know, that kids need with a teacher, especially if they're in a home environment where they're not getting that structure and support, you know, having that physical communication and contact with, you know, a teacher that they trust and things like that daily is, I think, is really affecting a lot of the kids too. It's just that I think from what I've noticed, I think adolescents have had the hardest time adjusting because of that missing piece of that peer connection. My son is, you know, behavior things have popped up that has never popped up before. I'm starting to see a little turnaround now that we know football is starting, and I've got him connected with a coach. I had to do some things that I never had to do to try to get him through this, whereas I didn't need to do that with my daughters. So it's my point in all that is that it's a very unique experience. Right now, like, we're all experiencing trauma, and how we experience it is very unique to each of us. And I can see that with my own children. Each of them have handled this differently, but my son has probably been the most affected. And it's been a real, like, balancing act, like I kind of said before, is trying to keep them safe and keep them healthy versus trying to keep their mental health okay. I think this issue is a two-piece thing. It's not a combination. The mental health is one issue and the pandemic is another issue, and they can't be lumped together, and one can't be canceled out because of the other one. I really, it's like we're dealing with two things, and it's trauma that's affecting literally everybody. So when these kids come back to school, I think I got completely off track. But when
it's a conversation. You're good.
Okay. I tend to drift. But my big concern, right now with the kids starting to come back is we're gonna, it's kind of like they've gotten through this piece. Now things are starting to come back. And what emotional effect now is that are we going to see kind of like as afterfall from all of this? Teachers are going to need to understand the signs of anxiety, understand the signs of depression, understand, that each child, even though they experience the pandemic similarly, they have a completely different reaction than the student sitting next to them or, 6 feet away from them. There's just a lot in mental health that I think the teachers and schools are going to have to be prepared for.
Let me interject something right there.
Okay.
Let me put you at peace. I'm trained out. Okay. I'm in school. I'm trained out. If I take another training on mental health or, watching out for the signs or whatever it is, I have had so much training. I cannot begin to tell you. The one thing you do not have to worry about is training.
But the parents haven't had the training. So what?
And that's up to the parent.
What do we know
out
to
there
look
for the parents? The school can't be responsible for the parents. I'm addressing her concern on the school.
Trained.
Now, I know in Loudoun County, Hayes is trained out. I'm tired.
One of the things that they do in like programs that they've been doing, through public health is they're trying to do it where schools and families, it's actually very interconnected so that they're, if one doesn't catch it, the other does. And that parents, they're starting to do like home visits for at-risk kids.
I think at some point though, you gotta give the school a break. I'm speaking up for the school.
Well, and that's what I was asking.
Everything on the school. I'm sorry. I'm gonna pull out on that one.
So what should parents be looking for though?
Because I cannot expect the school to train the kids, teach the kids, watch out after kids, feed the kids, protect the kids, and teach the parents.
And that's why schools need to invest in hiring mental health workers, therapists, psychologists. The schools are really, I think, going to need to increase the number of counselors they have on campus. I posted a meme the other day that I thought it was sarcastic, but it was true. It was like, so we're getting our kids back to school. We're getting things back because their mental health is such a concern. Now, what are we going to do to actually deal with the mental health? And no, it shouldn't be put on the teachers. I've been a teacher for 20 years. I get it. There's
more people in the school than the teachers. We need to make that clear. There's more in the school than the teachers, because if you don't have a support staff, the teachers are null and void.
Yeah.
So we need to understand.
I was going to say, I believe in the COVID rescue plan. From my understanding, they actually put aside money for school counselors to hire.
Yeah, and well, first of all, schools are understaffed to begin with.
Yes.
You can't send 1,800 kids to school and you only have a complete staff, including everybody from custodians to the cafeteria workers to teachers, you only have 150 to maybe 190 people in the building to cover 1,800 kids. It's impossible. So we're understaffed already.
And
So
school
now to deal with this on top of it, they need to take some of that COVID money and do some other things with it. I'm not going to get into the things that I see, but money can be spent other places.
Well,
Yes.
they're also doing, there's going to be for the ventilation, vaccinating teachers. It's
Done.
a whole plan to make sure you get back to school safely. And they're also addressing the mental health issues to support teachers, and parents.
It's
Yeah,
going to
and-
be
Yeah,
interesting.
can I?
part too.
Yeah, Mary. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead, Heidi.
sorry. I was just gonna say, and the meme also kind of that I was talking about referred to teachers too. Like the teachers have been through a pandemic and through trauma too. And the teacher could have, teachers could have lost someone. Teachers could have been sick themselves. Teachers are going to be in need of as much support as the students for their own personal needs, not just in supporting the students, but for their own mental health and their own peace of mind. There needs to be a piece there, I believe. And the one thing that I know in California so I'm licensed, I have my pupil personnel services credential, which allows me to be a school counselor. And one of the reasons that I decided to continue on with my master's in psychology is because school counselors are very limited to what they can do for a student. Basically what they can't actually do anything therapeutic wise with the student. They have to refer out. So my point in that is, yes, schools need more school counselors, but they also need people who are licensed and who are able to do that step beyond what a school counselor can do. And that's where, I don't know one school district in my area where I live that has an MFT or a social worker on staff. They just don't do it.
I mean, school counselor, I apologize. I meant mental health professional.
Okay. Yeah. So
Sorry.
then everything I just said. No.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Well, there's supposed to be more mental health professionals. Also, some of them are going to social emotional learning.
Yes.
Teaching everyone mindfulness
Yes.
should basically be in the curriculum.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Based on the science.
Definitely now.
For everyone. The teachers.
Yeah, that was the point. That was the point that it's funny enough, Heidi, that was the exact point that I was about to make.
Okay.
I think that just, as a parent, I'm not in the school system, but as a parent, I think that we're missing the whole grace piece of this experience. As human beings, we're all going through this for the first time. There is no pandemic survival expert. We all are going through this for the first time. That includes the teachers, the administrators, the parents, and the kids. And so there's a grace piece that's missing across the board. I don't look to the school system to provide me with the perfect solutions. They're trying to figure it out as well as we are. They have a little bit more resources than we do, but they're still human beings. And like you said, they deal with it too. They may have lost someone, but also the pressure of having to come up with these solutions to take care of communities. That's a lot. And I think we all have to just figure out how to work together better to not only support the children, but support ourselves to make us our best, to be in a position to support them holistically.
Yep.
Jamie
Sorry.
Jamie and I had this conversation. I swear I want to say it was after another school shooting where I said, they teach them math, they teach them reading. They don't teach them life skills. They don't have they should have a class, mindfulness, how to cope, communication, etc. And Jamie says, well, I teach that at home to my boys. You know, we're always talking about these things. So I'd rather them be in math and science. And I said, well, when the kid who didn't get this at home comes and shoots your kids, you're going to wish you had that class. And she goes, you have a really good point about that.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
she's a great mother. She does all this at home.
I'm the world's okayest mom.
No, it's not every student has the same home situation, the same any situation. So that's what makes it even more difficult, is that there are so many factors too that come into play that I think people have this perception that, I mean, I know people understand that there are, you know, some people have more advantages than others, but I still think there's this perception that everybody is still pretty close to my family. Like, they're not really that much different. Like, and I feel like that just people need to really see the you know, the immense difference that there really is in students' home lives and what they come to school with every day, with now this on top of it.
The dynamics are really with kids coming to school. Just the dynamic on a day-to-day with the same kid can be different from day to day, from week to week. You have kids coming from separated homes. They're with mom this week and dad this week, and they left their homework at mom's house, but they're at dad's week this week, and the teacher doesn't know, so their grade, you know, changes because they didn't have their work because they left it at mom's and they're at dad's, and the parent, you know, the teacher doesn't know, and then the kid gets upset. And so, you know, they're carrying so much. I've seen kids come to school in tears because they just had an argument, and I'm pulling them aside, you know, come with me, let's go, you know, come with me in the back, take this tissue, get yourself together, let's go and see who's your counselor. I don't let kids go to school. You know, if I'm catching them in the morning, I don't let them go to class upset. You know, they need a moment before they go to their peers with their face all messed up. You know, when I would hope, like Kim said, that there is a point where the understanding that those dynamics exist, and everybody's kid is not coming from the Beavers Cleavers home, you know, where everything
coming from
pristine, everything is pristine and perfect. You have some kids come to school because they don't have anything at home to eat. We've got those kids right here in good old Loudoun County. I mean, you know, we have to understand the dynamics of the kids that are coming to these schools. Also, and instead of parents screaming and hollering on social media and blasting out on the news, they need to really, why don't you pick up your butt and go to school and volunteer? Why don't you do that?
Well, we have an extreme need for substitute teachers, and I don't see these people screaming on Fox News from our county. We have individual parents doing that. I don't see them volunteering to teach.
That's because this really isn't about the kids. That's why the whole reason that they're doing that. That's another conversation. The end result is not to get the kids back in school. The end result is to be able to do what they want to do.
Well, the end result is really to get the attention.
And that's sad because it's not about the kid.
No, it's about them. I mean, the original study done in 1998 that found that, you know, adverse childhood experiences is tied to mental and physical health. They found in a white college population, 2/3 of these kids had at least one adverse childhood experience. Now put them in a community of color, put them in, you know, a low socioeconomic community. Or I came from a quote unquote middle class Jewish family. Everyone wanted my parents. They put me in gymnastics. Like, I had accounts at restaurants where I could get food. Like, my life looked perfect. I was drinking to go to school in junior high school. I was suicidal. I tried to kill myself. And everyone thought that I would have perfect. I was pretty, I was popular, I was this. I wanted to commit suicide because my home life was really that bad, because my parents were that emotionally abusive and neglectful. They paid for everything, but, you know, my dad was doing drugs and was telling me I was a piece of shit if I did anything wrong. You know, hit my mom.
That picture right there is what some kids deal with on a day-to-day. And we have to be able to notice those signs, from the school to the bus drivers to the parents, everybody that gets their hands on kids. They have to watch out for the signs. They have to. And the blame game has to end, and we have to cross the aisles and work together for the sake of these kids.
If you end up in the counselor's office, there's something wrong at home.
Yeah.
Any kid that ends up in the counselor's office, there's either something is going on with a peer, but more often than not, there's something going on at home.
That's usually true, but
a lot of kids like to hang, truth be told, a lot of kids like to hang out in the counseling department.
Well, I was there because I was in trouble all the time. I had my own coffee mug.
And then they come back there, they sit, they get snacks, they hang out, they talk. And
Mary, Dr. Grant brought up a really important piece of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand exactly what Dr. Grant is coming from. She and I would have a lot to talk about, offline. It sounds like a very similar experience. But the bias. So when we're dealing with certain communities, even within the school system, I think Mary would be an anomaly. I would even say that Heidi is probably an anomaly. But with the trainings that we're doing here in Loudoun County, and we talk about, diversity and inclusion, we talk about, perception and bias, unconscious bias, things like that. When we're dealing with a pandemic and you're looking for the signs, what level of bias is involved in your looking for the signs, and what gets missed by that bias? So for instance, as a single parent who's very invested in my kid, I would be the trigger more often than a Dr. Grant. Let's say if you were married, or who's married? Do you have any married? Vanessa. And so they're thinking, single parent, the assumption would be there's all these different challenges, there's all these different triggers, and so there's an extra eye put on that child. But then the nuclear family gets completely missed, because by all stereotypical purposes, everything should be solid, so it would have to be almost a screaming of saying something is wrong. So what level of training goes into this conversation for the school system or the counselors when they're dealing with these kids? Because it's something I dealt with personally, so that's why I'm speaking of it. There was a hypersensitivity in my son's school system, and I think it was based a lot and rooted a lot in the fact that I was a single parent, because it was almost a projection of things that were non-existent that I had to deal with, because you're coming with preconceived notions.
Is that a single parent no longer is seen as the same kind of traumatic experience that it was a long time ago, because back then, and people are carrying forward biases that aren't real. What they found is that it's not, no longer the stigma of having a divorced parent or going between parents. Everyone has it. Everyone knows friends that do it. It's when it's acrimonious, when they have this, acrimonious relationship between the parents, that it becomes an issue. Like, dad always yells at the mother, about the kids, like right in front of them.
Yeah, a good divorce is better than a bad marriage.
Yes,
for children.
Exactly.
And I did want to come back to something that we said, around when kids end up in the counselor's office, there's something wrong at home. That's not always the case. I think we do need to acknowledge that.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, sometimes kids can have mental health issues, and you can be a really great, doting, completely attentive parent. I have a family member who's a child with schizophrenia, and his parents did nothing wrong to cause that.
I mean, again, there are mental health issues that obviously, but talking to the parents at home, you get that information that what is going on with the kid, So you know what to look out for with that child. It's the me's, it's the Kimberlys, it's, the kids who everyone thinks, oh, they have the perfect life. They're the ones that when you end up in the counselor's office, he kept saying, I don't know why you keep ending up here. I was ending up here because I was being abused at home.
I think it's a detriment, and I think it's very naive for anyone to assume outwardly that anyone's life is perfect. That is no ways true.
Yep.
I have been in mansions in this county, and the parents are total dunderheads. They treat each other like crap. They treat the children like crap, but everybody thinks it's, fairyland in Mayberry because they live in a big, expensive house. And that is, no, I've seen it too much since living in this county. So people have to be realistic, not assume. You know what happens when we assume, right? And stop judging people by the things they have. Judge them by their character, judge them by how they treat each other, and judge them by how they treat children. Because if people don't like children, you need to stay away from them. Just like women that don't have girlfriends, stay away from them too.
I think you hit on something really important there, Vanessa, is a lot of this starts with how we as women treat each other. The sanctimommies out there, like we don't give each other grace.
No, we don't.
And we don't help each other when we should. So many of us are so likely to judge rather than help. And you see this, my mother struggling at the grocery store. I had this experience, my children are about 1.5 years apart. And I have twins and a singleton. And I often was struggling. I have one who has really severe ADHD, and he would have meltdowns sometimes. And it had nothing to do with my, we had all the resources. I had him in counseling. I had a bouncy house in my basement for him to work through his stuff. But sometimes he just got overstimulated and he had meltdowns. And the judging looks I would get from other mothers versus anybody coming over. And there's really anything you do. Sometimes you just had to let him work it out. But people don't come over to help. They just look at you like you're the bad parent because you've got the special needs child.
Well, I'm there with you. My oldest is on the spectrum. And when he was 3 or 4, sometimes we could not go out because he was dealing with challenges. Now, a lot of that, of course, he's grown out of. And if I don't tell someone, they don't even know he's on the spectrum unless he tries to look at them straight on, the eye contact thing. So we just, like you said, we have to allow one another grace. We have to be educated. Not all kids are the same. There's a high population of special needs children in this county and where, all of us live. So people just need to be educated on kids come in different packages.
And so do families.
And different families and different setups.
The different
single parent run households in the United States are at 70%.
Well, that's an interesting tie to what we're seeing.
Why do I know that? I know that because I read and I pay attention.
If you look at,
I'm tuned in. We do what we want to do. We pay attention to what we want to pay attention to. And until it affects us, we don't even care.
Well, and so much of our policy decisions, to your point about change, so many of our policy decisions, even at the federal level as well, state and local, are based on the assumption that the normal is this nuclear two-parent family. When people talk about, passing policies for families, they look like that's the noble thing to do. And in fact, most families are not now going to be in that ways. And then when they talk about, policies for single parent led households, they seem to act like that's charity. Right. There's this negative connotation to the policies for single parents. That's negative. We got to help, they're the problem, versus policies to benefit families, which is now not the majority anymore of how most Americans live. Those are seen as
Yeah.
somehow noble and stabilizing society.
Well,
And that's exactly why I brought up the
I want to make
conversation because that's
No, go
why I
ahead,
brought
Kim.
up the conversation because although we all know that it is unfortunately probably more common than not that children are growing up in single parent households today, there is still stigma. And depending on the communities that you live, that stigma is extremely more visible than others. I mean, like I said, coming from Maryland, you know, it was probably sparingly that I dealt with any sort of, you know, inappropriate inquisition. But, you know, and the experience I've had in the last 5 years has been astounding. I mean, even to the point where it's like, you know, employers are asking you, you know, well, how do you do it? Do you have a network? And it's just like that, you know, it's inappropriate, you know, so it's just, you know, when it mix that in the middle of a pandemic and we're looking out for, it's almost like the shoplifter in the store. You know, there's the one kid that's like completely, you know, has a wallet full of money and he's shopping, but he's being followed in the store because of the stereotype. But then the kid who's stealing is actually under the radar. In this situation, we're talking about mental health and being able to identify the warning triggers, but also within ourselves, making sure that those triggers are not attached to biases.
Well, I want to make a comment, and I grew up watching this. I watched my sister, Valerie, my eldest sister, who passed away in '09. I watched her raise my niece from age 4 to age 30 by herself. So I have a heart affinity for single parents, especially single moms. And I know what my sister struggled with. I know what she had to do. She was the strongest person I've ever known in my life. And she did everything that she had to do to raise my niece. So when I look at single parent households, I think to myself, how the hell do y'all get that shit done? Excuse me. And I'm married and it's already hard, but being single and having to maintain households and everything that a married couple does is, I know it's a challenge for you guys. So what we need to do as a society is we need to stop pushing this narrative of the nuclear family. It no longer exists.
And tying
It
this
no
to what we're
longer
going to talk
exists.
about.
And not only does it no longer exist, but we need to afford more grace and more empathy for our fellow people.
And tying this to what we're going to talk about next week. And, you know, as sad as it is for us not to be able to have two parent households, for some of us, for our children, this is so much better than in the days when women couldn't leave and had to stay in unhealthy and abusive situation. It's not just better for women, it's better for our children to not see toxic, abusive situations. We treat single family households like it's some sort of a huge trauma, but the trauma can be people who are toxic and violent staying married.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And by the way, people become single parents for different reasons.
Right. How about that?
Okay.
I used to beg my mom to leave. Beg her. Please, I just want you guys to be happy. Apart. Please.
Yep. Yep.
No,
and honestly, that
you don't stay for the kids. You're staying for yourself.
Yeah. And that's what I teach my son. You know, it's not about who's there, it's about the value in the family and how in the support system that and the foundation that he has. You know, it's to me, I think a worse situation when you have a warm body but a toxic mind. And that's what, for me, I try to make sure that is not, at least in our circle.
I wanted to bring it back around a second to what we were talking about with the social and emotional learning and that's training and all that stuff that teachers and stuff have been going through. I've been a teacher I am a teacher, but I was a full-time teacher for junior high, high school for many years. And I know that there are a lot of things that tend to cycle through education as, you know, the newest thing for us to be on top of. My fear, I think, is that the social and emotional learning that has been kind of brought to the forefront in the last year or so, I'm afraid that that's going to be another fad, if that's what you want to call it. I'm afraid that it's going to be something that, you know, I believe that the teachers have every bit of good intention, but they are not trained to do the things that some of the social and emotional skills, things like noticing the changes and things like that. You know, teachers aren't trained to do that. And I fear that it's become more of, well, we have to do this. We have to, you know, we have to do this for WASC, or we have to do this for, you know, the district or whatever. And while they sit through the trainings and they learn and they understand and they implement it as much as they can, I don't know that it's become actually a part of education. And I think that that's the piece that's missing. Like, it can't just be, oh, we have social and emotional learning group Wednesdays for an hour. Like, my daughter used to call it depression class. I'm like, what are you going to? She's like, that depression class. I'm like, oh my God. It needs to be more part of education in general, and not just this thing that they do for an hour on Wednesdays. I feel like that's the piece that is missing. And I think that if it becomes more integrated in education, that parents will catch on to those things too. Like, it can't just be this thing we're going to do for the next year because we have to, and then next year something else.
Well, it needs to be in a curriculum, not like, you know, the one day a week you have to go to the auditorium.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it has to be integrated
Part
in
of
learning.
yes.
And I
Yes.
think it's also worth considering that the trauma that our children have experienced in the upheaval will extend beyond when things get back to whatever our new normal is.
Yep.
It isn't like this is over when we all, if let's say everybody gets vaccinated, there's some miracle, we are all vaccinated, COVID has gone away, and we're all back at school to fall. We can't just snap our fingers and have the trauma that our children and that we as mothers experienced and as women just be gone.
Right. Because when someone experiences trauma, it changes your brain, the way that your brain functions. It interferes with, you know, the patterns of neurons, and, you know, there's literal chemical change that takes place when someone experiences trauma. So you're right. Just because the pandemic ends, that's kind of what I was saying in the beginning. There's going to be fallout after this. There's going to be stuff that still needs to be dealt with, and, you know, healing that needs to take place. And it can't just all of a sudden be over. That's what I'm afraid of. That is my biggest fear.
I don't know, but I'm a little hopeful though, because, you know, I look at all of us, you know, generations, you know, if it's the boomers or the millennials or whatever. And I mean, and I'm in this group, I just turned 47. So, you know, I'm on that crossing over the up top of the hill and on the downslope. You know, but if we look at last year, aside from just the pandemic, but everything that happened, you know, from the Black Lives Matter, from George Floyd, I mean, all of the things that happened, and you really take a hardcore look of who was leading that conversation, it was Gen X. You know, those were the people who really, if you take a hardcore look at who was on those front lines marching and forcing the conversation, you know, it was our kids. And these are the people who I think they're in a space. They're coming into, yes, we taught them how to learn what the environment is like and learn what the culture is like and to thrive within it. But they also are on, you know, the people who are the innovators, and they have gone through this pandemic. And like you said, they are forever changed. But I think they've been forever changed to take more ownership and claim of what they want this world to look like. And so I think when we come through this, there is going to hopefully be that energy that they are pushing to take back what they feel we deserve as people, or what they feel we deserve as communities. And so I look forward to that day to see what they produce. I look forward to that day of conversation. I think the fact that we have an African-American vice president is credence to that. You know, all those people who just got their voting, you know, Mary's daughter, same thing, you know, going out and creating these spaces for them to make their opinions heard and get their objectives focused on. And so we will probably be traumatized and still sit in the house thinking we gotta, you know, this isn't right. But then our kids are going to be on that front line saying it's going to change.
And I think we've seen really powerful examples of that started before this. If you look at the way the students in Parkland, at the Parkland shootings, and who've been through these terrible traumatic experiences, took that and got mad and fought to try to change things for younger students. I mean, they many of them have graduated and moved on, but they're still trying to fight to change things. And there's the same generation who then looked at what happened with not just George Floyd, but with the ubiquitous violence that we've seen against the BIPOC community in the United States, and decided that it stops with them. And I think there's something wonderful with that. And I'm hoping that they will start to hold people, our elected officials in particular, accountable. Think about how long, for example, Mitch McConnell has been in office. Once these kids start voting, I mean, I don't care if he's actually a vampire and could live forever, they're going to vote him out.
I truly hope so.
Well, I am.
Let's start with Rand Paul, because that man is bad for our country. It is bad for our people, and it's bad for our children.
I put Ted Cruz ahead of him. There are so many choices. It's like a box of terrible, rotten chocolates.
No, hopefully we can get rid of all of them. But
Absolutely.
But that's why we have to get ready for 2022 to vote out my Senator Rubio. Please.
I'm ready.
Yeah, midterms matter.
I'm ready.
Midterms matter. Come on. I know everybody's just taken a breather since the presidential election in 2020, but the midterms matter.
Midterms.
The day after your inauguration, I was ready for midterms.
Well, we know you was ready.
I'm ready. Stay ready.
You were ready
Well,
before
apparently-
inauguration. You've been ready. You were born ready.
I was ready before
Well,
the
apparently, can
inauguration.
y'all help get us past, what is it, March 6th, Jamie? March 4th? Can you help get us past that first?
March 6th. That's when the Magats seem to think that Trump will return to the presidency. I don't know if you watched what happened at CPAC, but they had a literal golden statue of Trump.
Are you serious?
Yes,
I am
and
serious.
a line to take a picture with it.
Yes, a golden statue. Now, first of all, if you ever make a statue of me, which will not be necessary, if you could cut off 75% of my body fat and make me look like that same comparative change, that would be awesome. But what was upsetting to me is that so many of these people claim to be Christians, and they've got a golden calf in front of them who is
They
a
don't
false
know what
prophet.
happened the last time that was
Yeah,
done, right?
sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah to me.
That sounds like
Praising golden statues. What does that remind you of?
that sounds like the golden calf that they
Precisely.
that they made when Moses went up
When
to talk to
Moses went
God,
up on the
and
mountain.
they couldn't
That's
wait
right.
for him to come back.
Yeah, those
That sounds
so-called
right.
Christians at CPAC.
Even
need to
I knew
read-
about it, and I'm
need-
Jewish. Well, I know about it.
Those so-called Christians at CPAC need to read some chapters
Mhm.
about golden statues.
Yeah, it was really disturbing to me as a Christian woman.
I wonder if someone did it at
I'm
the
not getting
show.
into that Christian talk.
Nobody got
No, y'all don't want me to do that. We're gonna
No,
save that.
someone had to
But
do
you know
that
what?
show,
I
right?
really need to do a show on and get at those Christians.
Now that's gonna be a show. I'm gonna have my party hat on for that one.
Yeah,
God is watching.
I'm feeling that really good. But we are going to put some. Jamie actually put some really great links in the comments for those of you who are watching later on, and take advantage of those. Please reach out. You can always put questions on the videos wherever you're seeing it. If it's professional stuff, Dr. Grant might be able to handle it, or we'll find some type of resource to give you. Please note that the advice that we give does not supersede a doctor's opinion in your doctor. If you feel that you're having signs of depression, anxiety, stress, trauma, whatever, you or your children or someone in your household, please do not take our word as professional advice. please seek the advice of a professional in your area. Okay. We love you. We want the best for you and for your children trying to get back to school. That's why we do what we do here. Next month is Women History Month, and we're going to kick it off with domestic violence. We're going to tackle the topics. We know it's Women History Month. We know we're supposed to celebrate, but we're going to hit some of the topics that are important to women. Like, we need to do more with domestic violence, and we need to put that in the forefront for things that are going on in Washington and stuff like that. So, Vanessa, do you want to just share a little bit about the guests that we're going to have next week?
So for our segment next week, we're going to have a dear friend of mine. Her name is Lori Carter, excuse me, can't talk. Lori Carter. And Lori created a organization, nonprofit called The Beautiful Movement. And she did that as a result of her experience as a former victim of domestic violence. So she's going to come in and share her story and talk about how she overcame what happened to her in her life. And she has a extremely compelling story. Get your tissue. It's not going to be pretty and shiny, but she has helped so many women, and she's very blunt and she's very to the point about what she sees in the world and how a lot of women are treated. So
I'm excited.
We're just talking about in America, okay?
We're just talking about that. We are going to handle that next week, and we're working on some more shows. If you're watching and you have any suggestions or things that you would like to see us talk about that you don't normally see people talk about, that's what we want to talk about, okay? Dr. Grant, do you want to add some professional advice? And
what I was going to attach to Mary's is sometimes we don't know that we are having mental health problems. We just feel overwhelmed, or we think it's just us. I would advise everyone who is going through this to speak to a mental health professional. There are telehealth programs. You don't even have to leave your house.
I have my family and family therapy via I have a Zoom meeting every other week with a family therapist just to see and keep everything on track. Because this is a hard thing, and we can do hard things, but we need a little professional help to make sure we're doing it right.
Yeah, I used to say to my students all the time, it's better to get a tutor, not knowing if you're going to need one, than later failing the test. Then you get the tutor. Be a little proactive with your mental health, because the worst that happens is they say to you, you're actually doing okay. Good job. And we could all love to hear that every once in a while.
And it also teaches our kids. I mean, we talked about how no one's been through a pandemic before. I'm hoping this is my first and only rodeo like this in my lifetime. But if it's not, what we're doing right now teaches our kids how they should handle something really hard if it comes during their lifetime. And I'm hoping my boys will take this and say, I should get family counseling if something else like this happens when they're parents. I want them to understand that there's no stigma in reaching out for mental health support, and that sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know. And when it comes to my kids' mental health, I don't know. I don't have degrees like Grant and Heidi do in these things. So I don't know. And so I'm accepting that I am completely clueless, and I've reached out to get help. And I hope my boys will take this as a sign that, God forbid something else, we go through this type of event, or even a smaller event that's limited to their personal lives, that they reach out and get help.
It's one of the things I wanted to say too, is that in order to, I think, get through this, all of this, is we still need to work on that negative stigma around mental health. It can't, I just watched a horror movie last night, and the kid was making fun of him for being crazy and calling him loco and all, that whole thing just needs to, it needs to be, in a sense, normalized, just as if someone has any other type of disorder or, health issue. We really need to get beyond that negative attitude about mental health and accept that it is something that helps people and that it's not a bad thing if you need to go to therapy or have a counselor.
And one of the reasons I'm so open about being bipolar and having PTSD and the trauma of my childhood is because I refuse to take on the stigma. And I want to make other people feel that they can, if Grant can talk about it, you know, and she has a PhD and she did, you know, then I can talk about it.
That was great of you to do that tonight.
Oh, I
Yeah.
talk about it all the time on Twitter.
That was great. And what I want us to do before we sign off, because we all understand in one way or another that it's okay to reach out for help. You know, we all feel that, but we also know how people portray those that want to reach out. So there's a lot of people out there that know they need mental help, or you don't even have to say mental health, know they need somebody to talk to, right? I'm even thinking about doing that with myself and my family, because just to air stuff out, because you got more dynamics going home. I got my mom living here and taking care of her, and you know, she's going through a whole memory thing, and how's that affecting her? There's a lot going on, right? So I want people to know that it is okay to reach out for help. So while we close out, I want each one of you to just say, hi, I'm Heidi, and I want you to know it's okay. Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I just want you to say, just say, it's okay to reach out for help. So I'm going to start it off. I'm Mary, and it's okay for you to reach out for help.
I'm Grant, and it is okay to reach out for help. It is okay to ask for help, and it is okay to say, I need help.
And I'm Vanessa, and it is 1000% okay to reach out for help, say you need help, go to someone you are comfortable with and say, hey, I need this. And even if they cannot give it to you, they will find someone that will help. So please speak up and let people know.
I'm Jamie, and it is absolutely not just okay. It is a tremendous act of courage and self-care to reach out for help. People love you. They love you. And I'm asthmatic. No one would ever tell me not to go to the doctor and get an inhaler if I was struggling. Even if I was just struggling a little, you would tell me to take care of it. Please take care of yourself. As somebody who's lost 2 people I love to suicide, and one we never saw it coming. So please reach out for help and look to your strong friends. Some of us are not as strong as we pretend to be. We might need some help. So look, be checking on your friends. We're so isolated right now, but please reach out for help and encourage your friends to do so too. Help is there, and it gets so much better when you get it.
Hi, I'm Kimberly, and it is absolutely imperative and a wonderful benefit to reach out and ask for help. Just like we have insurance for our car, just in case something happens. Imagine if we put that same energy into the most important things in our lives, ourselves.
My name is Heidi, and it is okay. And I would also venture to say it is beneficial to reach out, even if you are not sure that you have something going on, that sometimes just having that person from a different perspective to speak to can be beneficial. But yes, one thing I wanted to throw in real quick is if you notice any significant amount of change in anything, change in appetite, change in sleep, change in mood, change in what interests you, change in any of that, that is usually the first sign that something is happening, and it is 100% okay to reach out and talk to somebody.
And look for that in your kids. I posted some articles with what to look for in your kids, because sometimes what we think our kids are doing okay, and they're struggling more than we thought. I mentioned I have 2 kids who are neurodiverse, and I have one who's not. And through this, my child who's not neurodiverse has actually struggled. The neurotypical kid is the one who's struggling the most with anxiety and things. And I was not initially on top of it because I was so focused on my 2 special needs kids that my little gunny bear, which I thought he was cruising through, and he was not.
Thank you, everyone. And this is Mary signing off again, saying it is okay for all of you, no matter where you are, no matter what race you are, no matter how much you have. It's okay. It's really okay if you need to reach out for some help. See you next week. God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Ladies, you can hang out with me for a minute.